Happy Wednesday. Hi, Glenn. How are you? We'll wait a few moments for everyone to join. Adjust my lighting a little bit. I think that's good. That looks good. Hello. Yes, he's gone. There's actually a few pieces of good news out of California, and we'll look at that in just a second. Some not so good news, but overall, I'm pretty optimistic. I remain very optimistic. Eva is asleep right now, so hopefully she doesn't open the door. Good morning. I actually got 3 days off work and didn't have to prove my vaccine status. Well, that's good. Hello, hello. Eva doesn't sleep, she waits. You might be right about that. I have my spray bottle right here just in case. And it's loaded and I'm ready to use it. That was a warning shot. Tulsi Gabbard for president 2024. Is she still involved in I know she does a lot of speaking. Is she planning on running for anything? We've only just begun. Well, it's interesting. It's getting pretty interesting, and we'll get into that in just a second. I'll get started right at the 3-minute mark. Wish she would run. Yes, I really really like Tulsi Gabbard, and I always say whenever people try to say that, how do I word this? Whenever people try to say, "Oh, you would just support any Republican. You're just a Republican hack." Blah blah blah. Oh no, there are many Democrats that I would vote for over Rhino Republicans any day, and Tulsi Gabbard is one of them. I mean, clearly, depending on who she's running against and her platform, but oh yes, there are quite a few Democrats that, depending on their platform and depending on who they're running against, that I would vote for in a heartbeat over a Rhino Republican for sure. I think many Republicans probably feel the exact same way. Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. So clearly, the news is that the progressive DA Chesa Boudin was recalled last night. It was a very cool moment. It happened so early. It literally all the news stations started calling it at about 8:45 Pacific time. So that means they started calling it about 45 minutes after the first batch of results came in. So let's look at what happened. So we'll talk about all of the sort of happenings in California, why I'm really optimistic, and these super progressive policies are just falling flat on their face. It's really interesting too because I had a video about Chesa on my TikTok, and I just looked at a recent comment was somebody that says, I'm on the left, but these progressive policies are out of control. And the people of San Francisco have really stood up. They recalled several school board members, and now they recalled Chesa, and this was a grassroots movement. I have a little bit of footage from their little celebration last night. It's very cool, but politics in San Francisco are very corrupt. Politically, San Francisco is a very small town. Gavin Newsom came out of San Francisco. Nancy Pelosi came out of San Francisco. Kamala Harris came out of San Francisco. So it is actually a really big deal what is happening in San Francisco and California as a whole. Gavin Newsom, his plans are to run for president one day. So the two pieces of bad news are Nancy Pelosi won her primary, so she'll be off on the elections in November. Gavin Newsom also won his primary, which honestly, I expected Gavin Newsom to win his primary. The people in California are waking up, but they're not that awake yet. And to be honest, there wasn't anybody very strong that was going up against him in his primary. We had Michael Schallenberger, who I really liked. He's an author. He wrote San Francisco and Apocalypse Never. And I thought he had some really good ideas to help homelessness. But I just don't think not a lot of people knew who he was. He was running as a no party candidate. And I just don't think that he just didn't have the same notoriety as Gavin Newsom. And it's disappointing because it's like, guys, everyone in California knows how outrageous the cost of living is. They know how outrageous all these policies are, but they're not connecting the dots as far as where this is coming from. Even you can. And what's frustrating about Gavin Newsom is he's really good about playing the blame game. If you look at the forest fires, or you look at the water shortages or the power outages, all of those are directly related to policy. All of them. And he will brush it off as environmental issues. And people believe that, they buy into that. So that's the sad thing about California, to really look past the BS and to be able to connect the dots back to policy. You really have to know what's going on, and most people just don't. So that's the thing about California. So I'm not too hopeful that Gavin Newsom is going to lose in 2024, because it's just the type of state, if there is an R in front of someone's name, it's like orange man bad. They're not going to vote. But I guess you could have hope. I don't know. I'll have to look into who's running against him, but I'm just not super hopeful. That being said, on a local level, San Francisco and Los Angeles, I'm very hopeful. But first, let's look at what happened last night with Chesa. Very cool. Really cool too, because again, this was a grassroots movement. This was the people of San Francisco saying, we had enough of this, and can you just make our streets safe? Can you just shut up and do your job? All right. So, San Francisco voters sent shockwaves throughout the political world Tuesday night, removing woke district attorney Chesa Boudin from office, ending his disastrous tenure in office. Boudin could not overcome a coalition of more safety-minded Democrats, Republicans, and independents who were furious over the rampant property crimes, open drug use, persistent retail theft, and the skyrocketing number of certain crimes. Voters strongly endorsed ousting the reform-minded DA, as partial returns showed about 60% of voters supporting the recall, the Wall Street Journal reported. Since Boudin took office in January of 2020, burglaries have risen 45% and homicides have increased 37%. Boudin, who is backed by far-left billionaire George Soros, claims that his embarrassing defeat was really a victory. So this is what Chesa said last night. He said, we have already won because we have redefined the way that people think about the role of the district attorney's office. That's literally what he said last night. Great attempt at saving face. You'll know too, he also tried to call this a Republican recall, which is hilarious because when you look at the actual numbers, there are not even enough registered Republicans in San Francisco to meet the signature threshold to even kick off a recall election. So him calling it a Republican recall is mathematically impossible. And here's what a few people had to say about his defeat, or as he likes to call it, a victory. Kraz Granitz Why do I always find the most complicated names to pronounce? And then those are the ones that I highlight. Boudin is losing virtually every neighborhood with lots of non white voters except for Mission. According to San Francisco Chronicle, he's winning places with lots of progressive whites. Guys, here it is again. The people that push these policies are typically progressive white people. And they say that these policies are for minorities and people that are oppressed, but these are the ones that are pushing these policies. This recall effort was largely supported by the Asian community. Eli Lake, a podcaster, said a major blow to the crime legalization movement. Josh Hammer of Newsweek said, the ouster of Chesa Boudin feels like an inflection point in the fight to reclaim civilizational sanity from the forces of civilizational arson. Good riddance. I agree. Arsa Nomani, an education activist, said, congratulations, San Francisco. You recalled corrupt Chesa Boudin plus his woke machine. 2/3 chose common sense. With Virginia, you Americans hope we can meet in the middle where law plus order plus education as a priority exists. Anyone else want to take Asian voters for granted? See, Harmeet Dillon, she is an attorney. Let us never forget the craven Asian leaders of San Francisco who stood next to Angela Davis and Chesa Boudin to sell out their San Francisco constituents to the Soros agenda. Sit there and be beaten and robbed for the greater good. Not today, Satan. I love these responses. I think it was the other night on the live stream, we were discussing the effect of George Soros and the effect that he's had on the United States as a whole. So, George Soros and his foundations have pumped $40 million into getting 75 super progressive district attorneys elected in some of the biggest cities across the US. And when they did the numbers, these DAs represent 1/5 of all Americans. Well, now there's 74, not 75, which is very cool. So I wanted to take a peek. So New York Magazine says the backlash has begun. San Francisco, by the way, New York Magazine, if you're not aware, is a super leftist magazine. So there will probably be a slant, but I like to see what the other side is thinking. I like to get inside their twisted little heads. San Francisco voted overwhelmingly on Tuesday to recall Chesa Boudin, the city's progressive district attorney, potentially dealing an enormous blow to once ascendant criminal justice reform movement. In Los Angeles, on the same night, billionaire Rick Caruso won a plurality of votes with a tough on crime platform in the mayoral election, heading to a runoff with Democratic Congresswoman Karen Bass. Okay, so this is another piece of good news because on top of Chesa Boudin being recalled, Rick Caruso won his primary. And let me just read you a little bit about who Rick Caruso is. Okay. So Rick Caruso built the Grove. If you've never been to Los Angeles, the Grove, it's an outside mall. It's this amazing, wonderful place. It's got restaurants. It's beautiful. It's family. They have shows there and like family friendly concerts. And there's a movie theater and bookstores. It's just a really beautiful place. You can go anytime. You can go. There's a farmer's market there. You can go on the weekend with your family or with a date. I used to go to the Grove by myself several times a week. I would see matinees or just walk around. It's a really, really nice place. Rick Caruso he is a billionaire. He built the Grove. He also so the Grove was also where a lot of the rioting happened in the 2020 George Floyd protests. So there was a lot of mass looting that happened at the Grove. There was a lot of rioting. And Rick Caruso was basically like, I am tired of this BS. So he is a Democrat, but he's a very moderate Democrat. He is also a very tough on crime Democrat. And in the past, he donated to Republican causes. He's tough on crime and he wants to do a lot to rid the city of homelessness, which I think is very cool. He got 42% of his vote, and he will be. Okay, no, he didn't win his primary. I'm sorry. He got 42% of his vote, and he will be facing a runoff with Karen Bass. So this is also really, really good news for Los Angeles. Oh, and I don't know if you know this about Karen Bass. So Karen Bass was going to be a possible pick for vice president. She sort of fits, she checks the Kamala Harris boxes, if you know what I mean. She is a female and she happens to be black. So automatically made her a candidate to be the vice president, but it wasn't her, it was Kamala Harris. If she's anything like Kamala Harris, I hope that we stay way far away from her. But the thing about Karen Bass is crime and homelessness basically is not on her. It's not any talking points that she has. Goes on to say both low turnout elections played on complex local dynamics, but were clear rejections of a certain strain of liberalism that buoyed reform oriented prosecutors across the country and sought to defund the police. Los Angeles and San Francisco, Democrat dominated cities, were at the vanguard of such efforts. Boudin was elected in 2019, and his predecessor, fellow progressive George Gascon, moved to Los Angeles in 2020 to defeat a more conservative incumbent. But the national rise in crime unsettled both cities, with a spike in burglaries and homicides repeatedly seizing headlines and rampant homelessness and drug use that have come to define Los Angeles and San Francisco alike. The recall vote in San Francisco was a remarkable rebuke of Boudin. 60% voted to pull him out of office. And if you want to put a little smile on your face, I'll show you some of the people that led this effort celebrating last night. So this is them celebrating after the first round of results were in. Hopefully you can hear her correctly.
Voters said loud and clear that they want a district attorney who prioritizes public safety for every community. San Franciscans are engaged and well informed. We know that we can have important criminal justice reform and public safety for all, and that neither was being achieved under this district attorney.
So at the victory speech, recall campaign chair Jung also rejected the right-wing label. Remember I told you that Chesa tried to say that this was a right-wing recall? She says the voters didn't fall for Chesa's misleading claims that the recall was a con or part of some national Republican-led effort. Audience booed, yelling grassroots.
The voters also didn't fall for Chesa's misleading claims that the recall was a con and part of some national Republican-led effort. Driven by and supported by San Franciscans who were fed up with Chesa Boudin's failed leadership and the impact it was having on our communities and city.
See, even they laughed at that. You can hear them yelling grassroots. This was a grassroots-led effort, which to me makes it all the more better. and I hope should give people hope. Is San Francisco going to be perfect now? Is everything just going to change like that? No, but people are starting to wake up and connect the dots. Is Gavin Newsom still going to be the governor? Maybe, probably, but at least on local levels, people are standing up and doing things. And a lot of people forget how important local politics are. Your city council members, your DAs, all of that. I wanted to read a little bit more of this, and then I'll show you what's happening with George Gascon, because this is getting pretty interesting too. It says a new DA could seek to reinstitute cash bail, curtail diversionary programs, and shy away from aggressively prosecuting police officers who do bad things to civilians. Across the country, candidates for DA think twice before occupying the progressive lane that Boudin so proudly sought. It's still unclear just how far beyond the Bay Area the recall will resonate, but it was, in every sense, a backlash vote by liberals and a reflection of the dissatisfaction of a wide range of residents up and down the income ladder felt about the San Francisco they had come to know. Bodine was an easy scapegoat. Decades of failed housing and mental health policies have fed a homelessness crisis in a city that was never as liberal as it appeared. So, the night before, New York Mag tried to basically say San Francisco really isn't that liberal as it appears because they're recalling uh, Chesa Boudin, and they're still trying to say that, but it's not true. Most people that are super liberal want to feel safe walking down their streets. In a city that was never as liberal as it appeared, the pandemic appeared to fuel deep sociological challenges that no politician or prosecutor had easy answers for. Still, his rejected reflected visible grassroots anger at both these conditions and his policies, particularly Bodin's unwillingness to bring heavier charges against shoplifters and other kinds of petty thieves that have come to define, in the popular imagination, 2020's San Francisco. Wealthy older voters were eager to dump Boudin, as were middle class non white voters, particularly Asian Americans. Victimized by a string of hate crimes, Asian voters felt Boudin had not responded properly to their plight. Okay, so that is San Francisco. And the recall effort for District Attorney George Gascon, as you can imagine, did not let this go unnoticed. They noticed very much, and this is what they had to say. So, the campaign to recall Los Angeles DA George Gascon is reacting to the successful recall of progressive San Francisco DA Chesa Boudin. This is a statement they issued. Tonight showed that voters from every community and every walk of life, regardless of political ideology, are rejecting pro criminal policies that are masked as criminal justice reform. George Gascon and Chesa Boudin's failed social experiments have destroyed communities while doing nothing to meaningfully reform the system. If LA County voters sign and return their recall petitions, Gascon will be walking the same plank in the near future. Boy, I hope they're right. I really do. And speaking of the recall effort for George Gascon, a new poll came in. So, this is a new poll in Long Beach may spell trouble for LADA. 45.2% support to recall him, 27.1% oppose the recall. Two most common words voters describe Gascon with is lenient and progressive. Long Beach is heavily Democratic and is the second largest city in the county. So, info from the Long Beach Center for Urban Politics and Policy poll. So, this is really interesting. And this is a snapshot into what I think that a lot of people across the country are worried about. Now, this isn't focused on inflation, that's a national issue. This is more focused on local issues. But it just goes to show that all of these Democratic talking points, they're just not working, whether it's on a local level or a national level. So Long Beach voters say the most important issues facing Long Beach is homelessness, followed by crime. Voters approve of Long Beach Police Department, with most voters neither wanting to decrease nor increase funding for the police. Long Beach voters perceive that crime has increased over the last year. Nearly half of all Long Beach voters would favor a recall election of LA County District Attorney George Gascon. Long Beach voters favor policies that could help people experiencing homelessness, though Long Beach voters are also in favor of banning people experience homelessness from sleeping in public areas. So, in general, people are sympathetic for individuals that are homeless, but also don't think that they should be sleeping in public areas, which is basically where I stand. And what's happened with a lot of city council members in Los Angeles is if you don't like someone sleeping in a public area, you are not compassionate. Something else that happened with George Gascon, he actually had a big loss in court. So he was taken to the Court of Appeals. He was actually sued by his own staff, and the appeals court affirmed that Gascon overstated his authority when he refused to follow the three strikes law. So California has a three strikes law. On George Gascon's first day in office, he issued a bunch of directives and basically told people not to follow the three strikes law, which is a law in California. So he was sued by his own staff. Now keep in mind, and this is what's wrong with people like Chesa and people like George Gascon. They're in the judicial branch. They are not in the legislative branch. The legislative branch is where you introduce laws and you pass laws. He's in the judicial branch. He is supposed to enforce the laws, and he was actively not doing his job. In my opinion, that's a dereliction of duty. He is supposed to follow the law and enforce it. Yet when you hear him talks, he sounds like a legislator. He sounds like a congressman. He will say that we need to get to the root causes of crime and why they're happening. Okay, well that's not your job, and that's the issue. They do not. He doesn't understand the assignment. But that was good. So the judge basically ruled that he has to enforce the three strikes law and that he overstated his authority, and that's exactly what he did. And that's why his own staff is frustrated and they sued him. Mm. So here's more about Rick Caruso, then I'll get off Los Angeles. Caruso was recently endorsed by Tesla CEO and billionaire Elon Musk, and he has his share of backing from the entertainment world, including actress and businesswoman Gwyneth Paltrow, Kim Kardashian, and rapper Snoop Dogg. So he's popular with a lot of people. Bass and her allies in recent weeks have spotlighted Caruso's history of backing the GOP candidates and causes, and have linked Caruso to former President Donald Trump, who remains very unpopular in Los Angeles. See, that's their strategy. They're going to say that you're a Trump Republican, you're ultra MAGA, you're ultra MAGA King Republican. That's their strategy. Pushing back, Caruso told Variety 2 weeks ago that he's the farthest thing from Donald Trump. And everybody knows that. What we're seeing is an act of desperation, and they're trying to throw Hail Marys, and no one's buying it, said Rick Caruso. The winner in November will succeed term limited Mayor Eric Garcetti, whose nomination by Biden to serve U.S. ambassador in India is currently stalled. So that'll be interesting to see what happens there in November. Uh, Rick Caruso gives me hope in Los Angeles. The recall effort against George Gascon gives me hope for Los Angeles. And, the fact that Elon Musk is backing him is probably a good thing. Okay, so this just happened this morning. All right, I'm getting off Los Angeles politics, although I believe this happened in California as well. I didn't mean for that to happen. Anyway, I talk about Los Angeles and San Francisco a lot because, well, San Francisco has birthed some of the most powerful people in the country. Not birthed, but birthed their political careers. Some of the most powerful people in the country, and will continue to probably do so. And it has very corrupt politics. Also, we have people in our highest of offices that are pushing the same progressive policies that California has been trying to push. So to see the public having a backlash on these policies, I always say California is the future of progressive America. I think that's why it's important to pay attention to. Uh, any progressive policy that passes in California, most likely, if our current administration, the way everything is right now, stays in place, you will see that on a national level. So to see that even amongst the most liberal of us are rejecting these policies gives me a lot of hope. And that grassroots movements are able to push forward and successfully recall someone like Chesa Boudin, that gives me hope. And it's so funny because I watched earlier today, Tim Pool did a video on the recall at Chesa Boudin, and he's so negative about the whole thing. I was so mad at him. He's so negative. He's like, there's no hope for these people. They'll just keep voting in this blah, blah, blah. Nancy Pelosi's still there. They still have this and they still have that. And I'm like, that's not how my brain works. I am a persistent optimist, and I always try to look at the good side and have hope, understanding the bad side as well. But it was just really funny watching. You'll have to watch his video. um, but it does give me hope to see these grassroots movements off the ground. And even the whole recall effort with Gavin Newsom gave me hope, even though it didn't successfully go through. I was one of the people that was on the ground collecting signatures, and that was not the first recall effort. um, for Gavin Newsom. There was one that happened about a year or two prior that just kind of flopped. So to be on the ground on a little stand, just collecting signatures and seeing how far it got, to me was very encouraging. And all the people that I met, and I did it in West Hollywood, one of the most liberal of the liberal cities. And to meet all the people, the like-minded people, the Californians that were fed up with everything, it really did give me hope. And maybe that's just me living in the clouds or being my persistent optimist self, but those things really do give me hope. Sarah, would you name your chun set Chessa? Heck yeah. No, heck no. What does that name mean actually? I vote in LA's District 3 and mayor wasn't even on the ballot. Interesting. Okay, so this happened. Police arrest armed man near Brett Kavanaugh's home who allegedly wanted to off the justice. Yeah, this was in California too. This happened last night. In the middle of the night Wednesday, police arrested an armed California man near Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh's home after the man allegedly told others he wanted to off the justice. Supreme Court Public Information Officer Patricia McCabe confirmed to the Daily Wire on Wednesday morning that at approximately 1:50 a.m. today, a man was arrested near Justice Kavanaugh's residence. The man was armed and made threats against Justice Kavanaugh, she said. He was transported to Montgomery County Police 2nd District. The Montgomery County Police did not immediately respond to a request from the Daily Wire. Someone responded on Twitter, "This is why leaks are dangerous. This is why doxing justices is a bad idea. This is why justices' homes should be off limits." I totally agree with that. If you remember, after that information was leaked, home addresses of a lot of the justices were leaked as well. Anonymous sources familiar with the investigation told the Washington Post that the man is in his mid 20s and was carrying at least one weapon as well as burglary tools. Someone had tipped off police that the man could potentially pose a threat to Kavanaugh, the sources told the publication, and the man was stopped on a street near Kavanaugh's Montgomery County residence. He did not enter Kavanaugh's property, the report said. The Washington Post reported that initial evidence suggested the man was angry over a recent I monetized, so I have to be careful, mass things, and reacted to a leaked draft opinion indicating that the Supreme Court would overturn R versus W. This is why leaks are dangerous. This is why doxing justices is a bad idea. I just read that. This is why the court must release the Dobbs opinion as soon as possible. This is not, to quote the Chief Justice, business as usual at the court. The threat to the justices is not theoretical. Until the opinion is finally released, the justices are in grave danger. So a lot of people believe that the reason they want to release this as soon as possible is because a lot of people believe that these are intimidation tactics to sway the opinion of the justices. So they want them to release it and get it over with. And no Supreme Court justice, that is supposed to be a sacred part of our justice system. And no Supreme Court justice should ever make an opinion on the fear of public backlash or the fear of their own safety. Since we have all these conversations about democracy, that is not a democracy. That, in fact, is a banana republic. Carrie Severino called on Biden to stop appeasing the radicals in his party, emphasizing that the protests belong in the public square, not at a justice's private home. She said, "Will you finally condemn them?" The White House has not responded for requests for comments from the Daily Wire. That's why I'm reading this. A May 13th Department of Homeland Security memo obtained by Axios revealed the government officials are investigating threats to the justices, the clerks, to places of worship, and to abortion clinics. Those threats are likely to persist and may increase leading up to and following the issue of the court's official ruling. Again, that's why they want them to hurry up on the ruling. Axios reported that the memo attempts to link the pro life movement to white sandwiches, highlighting pro life violence in the past. So one of the issues with this, one of the frustrating things about this is that when this leak happened, it wasn't really condemned by anyone in the White House. None of that was actually condemned. They just talked about how awful the decision could be, but they did not condemn the leak. And I think that's what that individual was speaking on and asking Biden, are you going to condemn this? Are you going to say anything about this? None of it was condemned. And again, this just goes back to, we have all of these talks. We're having all of these talks because of recent events about safety. And it seems like safety is only an important matter when it falls in line with the agenda of the left. That's when we have conversations about safety. But any other kind of safety, for instance, the doxing of the homes of the justices, the leak of the documents, none of that was publicly defended, or none of that was publicly condemned by Biden or by Jen Psaki, who was in office at the time. Judges should have their homes at Disney World. They haven't had an attack in 20 years. They have really good security. Yeah, isn't that ironic that Disney World has such good security? I would have thought that they would have had some other kind of security. I mean, the good thing is the person was caught, so, nothing bad happened to the justice, but it's pretty wild. So does Universal and the NFL. It's pretty funny, isn't it? It's the backwards world we live in. Speaking of the White House press secretary, the new press secretary, I'm not sure who's worse, Jen Psaki or Corinne Jean Pierre. White House press secretary Corinne Jean Pierre insisted Tuesday during a briefing that the United States economy is in a better place than it has been historically. It's so funny watching these press briefings. They're actually worse than Jen Psaki. They're not as condescending, so that's nice, I guess, but it's we're at the point where we're just going to say whatever we want to say. Your evidence doesn't matter. What's going on doesn't matter. I'm just going to continue to just say whatever I want to say. Sarah, is it true that you have blonde hair? Actually, I have brunette hair, and it's the most brunette hair that anyone has ever had in history. Sarah, are you wearing a black shirt? No, actually. I'm actually wearing the greenish shirt that is so green you can actually see it from outer space. In fact, it's the greenest shirt that has ever been made in all of history. That's basically what the press briefings are at this point. It's pretty wild. Actually, so Americans are noticing gas prices that have since doubled, since Joe Biden has taken office. Um, Also, people are worried about, food prices skyrocketing. Actually, we are in the most robust economic comeback than we ever have been. What about what I'm seeing with my own eyeballs? Oh, no, our economy is working just perfectly. Everything is fine. Okay, I mean, I went to the grocery store and my bill was double, and then I filled up my gas tank and it was like $100, and that's pretty rough. Actually, our economy is doing better than it ever has. In fact, this is the best economy that the US has ever had in all of the history of all of the United States. That's what the press briefings are at this point. It's Um, Fox News correspondent Peter Ducey pressured Jean Pierre on a recent poll from the Wall Street Journal, which shows that 83% of Americans believe the economy is poor or not so good. In response, she doubled down on the narrative that the economy has improved since Joe Biden took office. I told you I could be the press secretary. She said, "What I'm trying to say to you is that the economy is in a better place than it has been historically. And so we feel here at this administration and other experts as well, we feel that we are in a good position to take on inflation. We are in a good position to really start really working on lowering prices." Oh, that makes me feel good. So you're like really going to start really working on, no, you feel like you're in a good position to like really start really working on lowering prices. I feel great. That sounds awesome. Gas is $9 to $10 in some parts of California. But the thing is, I don't think they are intending to do anything. So that's why they have to answer questions like that. And they really they can't, there's nothing intelligible that you can say. They're backed into a corner, so they almost have to answer questions like that or just be like, look, we're full of shit. I'm sorry, we're full of shit, we did it on purpose, you're gonna suffer, whoops, but it's for the greater good. However, the United States economy contracted at a 1.5% annual rate during the first quarter of 2022, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, which associates recessions with two consecutive quarters of negative growth. Meanwhile, gas prices have more than doubled since President Biden entered office, while inflation surged from 1.4% to 8.3%, a near four-decade high. And some actually argue that it's way higher than that. Several prominent American business leaders are now voicing their concerns about a looming recession, and many technology companies, including Microsoft and Tesla, have initiated pauses on hiring to announce layoffs. Despite her assertion, Despite the press secretary's assertion that many experts are optimistic, several Democratic economists have pushed back against Biden's handling of the economic policy. Corporate power is playing likely a very small role in the inflation that we're seeing right now. Jason Furman, a Harvard professor and former chair of President Barack Obama's Council of Economic Advisors, told Bloomberg last month. The economist was in essence rebuking Democratic claims that inflation is coming from greedy corporation price gouging consumers. That was what Jen Psaki was saying when she was in the White House. She was saying that a lot of this inflation you're seeing are from corporations that are price gouging. She also blamed the oil companies that are price gouging and Putin. Furman contended that the primary solution has come from the primary cause of inflation, which is demand is way too high, a reality driven by fiscal stimulus from the Biden administration and monetary stimulus from the Federal Reserve. Even at the end of last year, Larry Summers, who served as Treasury Secretary under President Bill Clinton and Director of the National Economic Council under President Barack Obama, sounded the alarm over soaring inflation. I thought we could sustainably run the economy in a red hot way. That would be a wonderful thing, but the consequence, and this is the excruciating lesson we learned in the 1970s, of an overheating economy is not merely elevated inflation, but constantly rising inflation. That's why my fear is that we're already reaching a point where it will be challenging to reduce inflation without giving rise to recession. Summers voiced concern over secular stagnation as long-term threat to the United States. I'm really not sure what's going to come after this current episode, he said. I'm certainly not confident that we are going to have sustained access demand for many years. The challenge is that we pumped an aggregate demand now, and who knows how we're going to work our way through back to more levels of demand. This is really funny because Cardi B, the rapper Cardi B, seems to be more in touch with economics than our White House press secretary or the Biden administration. She tweeted out the other day, when are they finally going to admit that we're going into a recession? Who knew that Cardi B was on it more than our current administration? Maybe she can educate them on basic economics. Cardi B, we need your assistance in the White House. There's the kitty, Eva. She's going in her house. Oh, let's look at Chesa from last night. San Francisco DA Chesa Boudin in a moment with his supporters before addressing us in the press for his historic recall. Okay, so this is Chesa last night.
Those things make a difference. It's like shadow boxing. Trying to have a fight where there's nobody you're fighting against. You can't win that fight. We're gonna win the war.
Oh, that was him talking. That didn't sound like him. Okay, can you hear it?
Those things make a difference. It's like shadow boxing. Trying to have a fight where there's nobody you're fighting against. You can't win that fight. But we're gonna win the war. We're all committed. All of us. And we're gonna keep fighting. Thank you guys. Thank you. Thank you. Chesa! 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 Chesa!
Big.
Chesa! 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 Things make a difference.
He said, "We came to make a difference. It's like shadow boxing. We're still gonna fight." The next Ultimate Fighting Championship. That's what it sounded like. I didn't recognize his voice either. I've heard him speak before, but I didn't even recognize his voice. Someone said, "What's with the vocal fry?" That's why I was surprised at first. I was like, "Wait, was that him?" Yeah, he did have a bit of vocal fry there. Vocal fry cost is an applicant. Oh, is that John? Your John boy? They suspended you. Chase a criminal out of town. And you can notice too, like if you look at the people that are supporting Chesa, and then you look at the people that are they look like latte liberals. That's sort of what they look like. And this is rung true in almost every single one of these um with almost every single one of these super progressive, whether it's city council, DA, you look at the supporters and they all have something in common. But I really hope this can repeat itself in November in Los Angeles. So it says here that National Guard preparing for deployment in wake of expected Supreme Court ruling on R versus W. All right, guys. Well, it's about. Thank you so much for joining. I will be live tomorrow again at 2 p.m. and maybe tomorrow night as well, but I'll let you know during the day. That was a lot of fun. That was good news today. Well, for the most part, it was good news. Kavanaugh wasn't good news, but I'm glad he's okay. I'm glad the person was caught. Um, anyway, lots of other positive news. Can I make TNN a moderator? Yes. Hold on. Let me see if I can do that right now. Hold on. I'm going into my YouTube. I'll see if I can you a moderator right now. I always lose this. Comments. Mm. I might have to do this after I get off because it's being kind of slow right now. Hold on. I might have to do this after I get off. I'm trying to do it right now, but it's just being really slow. Now it works. Wait, I can't remember where it is. Audio settings? No. Oh, wait. Community. Okay. Oh, here we go. Oh, I know what I have to do. Hold on. Well, I already made you one. See if you can say something. Okay, there you go. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I will see you tomorrow. Hi from Idaho. We're just ending now, but I will see all of you tomorrow. Okay, bye. Y'all have a good night or a good day. Whatever time it is where you are. Have a good one. See you later. Bye.